Bruce Willis' career was launched when he played Detective David Addison in the 1980s TV hit Moonlighting. In 1988, he became a bona fide movie star with the success of the action blockbuster Die Hard. Appearances in subsequent hits such as Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense, as well as his marriage to actress Demi Moore, ensured that Willis remained one of the most well-known actors of his generation. Willis was born Walter Bruce Willis on March 19, 1955, in Eder-Oberstein, West Germany, where his father was stationed in the U.S. military at the time. Willis is the oldest of David and Marlene Willis' 4 children, a group that includes 3 sons and a daughter. In 1957, following his father's discharge from the military, Willis moved with his family to Carneys Point, New Jersey. There, the seeds for the tough, blue-collar edge that's come to define so many of Willis' roles were planted as he watched his father feed the family through work as a welder and later a factory employee. By all accounts, Willis, nicknamed Bruno by his friends, was a popular kid with a good sense of humor who in high school was elected student council president. He liked pranks and wasn't immune from getting into occasional trouble. Coupled with this, however, was a slightly softer side that centered on his interest in the theater and the stage. It was born oddly enough out of the realization that a stutter, which plagued his speech as a youngster, immediately went away as soon as he began performing in front of large groups. After graduating from high school, Willis followed in his father's footsteps and found work with his hands, first in a chemical factory and then as a security guard, before returning to the classroom as a drama student at Montclair State University in New Jersey. Willis' interest in acting didn't wane, but eager to strike out on his own, he quit school after his sophomore year and moved to New York City to try and make it as a working actor. For Willis, whose acting heroes include Robert De Niro, Gary Cooper, Steve McQueen, and John Wayne, work didn't come easy. He waited tables, tended bar, and, when he had the chance, auditioned for roles. His first real break of any kind came in 1977 when he debuted in the off-Broadway play Heaven and Earth. More stage work followed, but in 1980 Willis jumped over to film when he scored a bit role in the Frank Sinatra film The First Deadly Sin. 2 years later, he landed another minor part in The Verdict, starring Paul Newman. There was some exposure on the television screen, too, with occasional appearances on episodes of Heart to Heart and Miami Vice. In 1984, after replacing Ed Harris in the off-Broadway hit Fool for Love, Willis headed west to Hollywood to audition for the Madonna vehicle Desperately Seeking Susan. Willis didn't get the part, but in a decision that would prove to be incredibly smart, he stuck around an extra day in order to audition for a new romantic comedy called Moonlighting, set to debut the following March. As the story goes, Willis dressed in combat fatigues and, donning a punk haircut, read for the part of David Addison, a wisecracking private investigator. He wowed the TV executives with his gregariousness and charming attitude to beat out some 3,000 other actors. Co-starring Sybil Shepherd, Moonlighting revolved around the crime-solving exploits of Matty Hayes and Addison of the Blue Moon Detective Agency. The show, which aired until May 1989, was a huge hit for ABC and an even bigger launching pad for Willis. In 1987, Willis returned to film when he was matched with Kim Basinger in the comedy Blind Date. That same year, Willis married fellow actor, Demi Moore. The same year as the release of Blind Date, Willis, an avid blues fan and harmonica player, stepped into the music studio for Motown Records to record Return to Bruno, a collection of bluesy soul songs that produced a modest sales return. In the summer of 1988, Die Hard, an action-packed flick that cast Willis as muscle-pumping hero John McClane, hit movie screens across the country with a bang. Even before its release, the film had managed to catch some notice, in part because both Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger had turned down the McClane role. When movie executives settled on Willis, in part because he brought a level of warmth and humor to the character, they agreed to pay him $5 million, a huge sum for an actor many still considered a relative Hollywood novice. The viewing public didn't care. With Willis doing his own stunts and whipping out memorable one-liners, Die Hard garnered an impressive $81 million at the domestic box office and later spawned 4 sequels. It was just the start for Willis, who in the ensuing decades has starred in films that have grossed more than $3 billion in ticket sales. A year after Die Hard, Willis was at the wheel of another hit, and back in a full-on comedic role as the voice of Mikey, the ever-observant baby, in Look Who's Talking. His role as the English tabloid journalist in Bonfire of the Vanities drew mixed reviews, and in 1991 the action movie Hudson Hawk, a vanity project of sorts, that Willis wrote and starred in, proved to be a box office failure. Other, less memorable projects soon followed. In 1994 Willis experienced a comeback of sorts when he took on the role of weathered boxer Butch Coolidge in the Quentin Tarantino-directed smash hit Pulp Fiction. Perhaps sensing the film was going to do well, Willis agreed to take a modest salary in return for a share of the profits. The film went on to gross more than $100 million. In 2010 Willis starred with Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and other action heroes in The Expendables. In 2012, he reunited with the film's cast to star in The Expendables 2. Within just 1 week, the movie had climbed to the #1 spot at the box office, bringing in nearly $28.6 million. Willis has since appeared in the sci-fi flick Looper as an older version of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character and reprised some of his earlier roles in A Good Day to Die Hard, Red 2, and Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. Along with maintaining a full slate of screen work, the veteran actor made his Broadway debut in 2015 in a stage adaptation of Stephen King's Misery. In 1987, Willis married actress Demi Moore. The couple, who divorced in 2000, have 3 children together: Rumer Willis, Scout LaRue Willis, and Tallulah Bell Willis. On March 21, 2009, Willis, who remains close to ex-wife Demi Moore and shares custody of his 3 children with her, backtracked on his pledge never to marry again, when he tied the knot with model actress Emma Hemming at the Turks and Caicos Islands. They then married again a few days later in a civil ceremony at Willis' California home. Willis and Hemming have 2 daughters, Mabel Ray and Evelyn Penn. In 2020, Willis portrayed Doraemon for SoftBank 5G advertisements in Japan. In January 2021, he was asked to leave a Los Angeles Rite Aid store for not wearing a mask to protect against COVID-19 during the pandemic in California. Willis later said, "It was an error in judgment. Be safe out there everyone, and let's continue to mask." In the later years of his career, Willis starred in numerous low-budget independent films that were panned by critics. He would often earn $2 million for 2 days of work per film. Those working with Willis noted that he appeared confused, did not understand why he was there, and had to be fed lines through an earpiece. Days before Willis was scheduled to arrive on set for one film, Out of Death, the screenwriter was instructed to reduce his role and abbreviate his dialogue. The Golden Raspberry Awards, an annual award for the year's worst films and performances, created a dedicated category, the worst Bruce Willis performance in a 2021 movie, for his roles in 8 films released that year. On March 30, 2022, Willis' family announced that he was retiring as he had been diagnosed with aphasia, a disorder that is caused by damage to the area of the brain that controls language expression and comprehension. The Golden Raspberry Awards retracted the Willis category, saying it was inappropriate to award a Golden Raspberry to someone whose performance was affected by a medical condition. At the time of his retirement, Willis had completed 8 films awaiting release in 2022 and 2023.